And it's Jerry Ashton with 15 Minutes of Fact here on WGRNradio.com. 15 Minutes of Fact as opposed to 15 Hours of Fallacy, which is what you mostly find on the traditional networks, and unfortunately some worse than others. But mainstream media doesn't do the job of really getting out the soul of what we call the Occupy movement, nor does it really go into any depth with the people who are involved with the Occupy movement. We're doing our best at 15 Minutes of Fact to compensate or change that. When you have a chance, for example, to listen to our next guest, Ray Lewis, he's the retired police captain from Philadelphia who one day in November of last year picked up a sign and stood in full uniform on the streets of New York City and protesting right alongside every other protester there. He became an instant celebrity within Occupy and probably an instant source of dislike for the people in blue who were standing across from him. Now, that was a year ago. We're now complete. We've celebrated our birthday, and I've got Ray Lewis on the line today with us from Philadelphia to ask him about his experience when he showed up at Occupy Wall Street for the birthday on September 17th. In fact, what Ray's going to do for us is give us, as any good teacher would, a grade, not only for occupiers as well as for the police force that were there tending them. So, welcome to the show today, Ray Lewis.
Jerry, thanks for having me here. I appreciate it. And just to give a little background to the public, I was a police captain when I retired after 24 years of service. I moved up to the mountains of the Catskill region in New York with my wife and was living a very Walden-esque lifestyle up there for those 8 years. And then I read about Zuccotti Park and this Occupy movement. I read their declaration, and I realized that everything they stood for, I agreed with. And that's what brought me down to Zuccotti Park last November.
Well, you've had, since that time, certainly a lot of experiences. The very first experience that you had was being handcuffed and put down to sit down politely on the streets because you were not being you were exercising civil disobedience, something that our Constitution allows for, and of course it also has repercussions. There are arguments on both sides of the table on, number one, Occupy, are they doing the right things? How could they be graded? The police, are they doing the right things? How could they be graded? So let's use a grading system from A to F, A being top of the class and F being just a plain flunk. Who would you like to start out with first to give me an idea of how you would grade the two parties?
We'll start out with the protesters, Jerry.
Please do.
I would give the protesters a grade of a B. I thought what was really, really great was that there was no outright violence. There was no smashing of windows. There were no attacks on the police. There were no bottles being thrown, no bricks. This, I thought, was wonderful when you had several thousand people there. And I did not witness one incident such as that, nor hear about any incidences. So I was really pleased with that, and that's what I took out of that whole thing that made me feel the best, that there was no violence.
Well, that's a good reason for giving them a B, and having also been there for the full 3 days of the holiday, I saw that the desires and the intention of peaceful protest was consistent throughout the encampments, no matter which group was protesting. The idea was to do it peaceably. Now, apparently, there must be something they didn't do because you didn't give them an A. So what happened there?
Yeah, they didn't get an A. They didn't get excellent because at the various places I was on September 17th, intersections, they were blocking intersections due to there being so many of them. And they got upset when the police asked them to move, keep moving. They felt that their First Amendment rights were being violated, but they weren't. What they fail to realize is you can congregate on a street corner, have your signs, have your chants, but not if it becomes so many of you that you start to block pedestrian or vehicular traffic. And what I saw protesters being very upset and refusing to move when the police asked them to, thinking that their rights were being violated, but they weren't. So that lack of legal knowledge, and that can be corrected through education, but that lack of legal knowledge stopped them from getting an excellent. And also the lack of, I didn't think they hit the educational aspect enough. In that, I didn't think they did a job of educating the public as to what they were about. They had thousands of people looking on, wondering, what is this about? And I just felt that their signs and their chants and their singing did not come across as educationally as it could have. That's what stopped them from getting an A for excellent.
Okay, so we'll let all that go unchallenged. I will talk about the educational part a little bit later with you and what you think can be done to improve that. But let's move over to your friends in blue. What grade are you providing the police?
I'm providing the police with a C, and I'll go into detail later as to why they didn't get an A, but first this is why they didn't get a B. 2 incidents. The first is when I got down there about 8 o'clock in the morning, I saw that they had Zuccotti Park totally sealed off with the steel barricades, which they had done previously, which is okay. But this time they were not allowing anyone in. And from a tactical viewpoint, I saw that as a big mistake. Because what you had now, you had protesters coming down, heading towards Zuccotti Park where this all began, and not being able to get in. So what's the result? You now have roving bands of very angry and frustrated protesters. As a police commander, that's not what I would have liked to have seen. Who made that decision? Why, I don't know. But later on in the day, Zuccotti Park was opened up, and that's where the big party was in the afternoon and at night. So I wondered, did they realize that it was a mistake to close it down, or was that part of their plan? I don't know. The other part that I did not like was police helicopter. I understand the need for the helicopter. They're incredibly important for surveillance of large crowds. But down at Bowling Green, where I was for an event of numerous speakers, and there was a large crowd listening to all these speakers, including Jill Stein, the presidential nominee for the Green Party, a helicopter hovered right above for a good half hour to 45 minutes while these people were speaking, including Jill Stein. And if you never were under a hovering helicopter, you have no idea how loud it is. It completely drowned out the speakers, and I found this offensive. I found it a violation of First Amendment rights to free speech, and the pilot of that helicopter knew exactly what he was doing. He or she was doing. My question is, was it that individual's decision or was it a command decision? Because it only served to anger and frustrate those protesters that were trying to hear. So I was really upset with that. And legally, I think the ACLU or the National Lawyers Guild would have a case against them using a helicopter in such an incident. So that's why they get a C.
Well, obviously you're going to have the police side of the story telling you exactly why they did what they did. You're going to have the protesters telling you why they did what they did. But why don't you and I, as two people who participated in this, discuss this between ourselves and also for the audience, and see whether or not we can be in agreement. For example, I'm a great admirer of yours. The very first time that you showed up at Zuccotti Park, you became a focus point for the pride of the protesters, and knowing that any citizen can speak out regardless of rank, uniform, status in society. And the very fact that someone dressed in blue would be willing to do that was heartening. At the same time, I know that you must come to the defense of the police as people, as someone who's had to control situations in the past where you had to use force as well. Now, you never saw any force. I did, but I only have heard about examples where there were people being punched in the face. So how can you and I as citizens, but still you with a police background and me as a citizen background, how can we come to terms with that?
Okay, Jerry, I have to call an ace and a spade, meaning this. The police have got to use force to effect an arrest when a person does not listen to their command. Because once you have people not listening to the command of police, then you're going to have chaos. And the police cannot let that situation get out of control. That's why when they initially give a command, they have to ensure that it's either enforced or an arrest is made. So when they make an arrest, here's what happens. The person thinks their right is being violated. For instance, they don't realize that they have to move off of a corner if they're blocking pedestrian traffic. They think their rights are being violated, so they become unruly and refuse to move. The officer then has to make that arrest. The arrest has to be made as quickly as possible. You don't want an arrest to go on. The longer an arrest takes place, the more chance there is for violence. You cannot match the person's effort to not be arrested with an effort to arrest that individual. You have to show more of an effort to overcome his or her resistance. That's why it can look a little brutal at times. For those two reasons, you have to use an amount of force to overcome their resistance, and you have to get this over quickly. And that is why some of the excessive force you see is shown, because of those two reasons.
Well, I think that the term excessive
it's interpreted.
Is that question? Well, slamming somebody's head on the pavement, that would be considered excessive.
Oh, absolutely. No, I'm absolutely something like that. I'm talking about a force used that is in excess of the force that is used by the protester.
Well, have you had any conversations with the men in blue that you found to be disrespectful to you, for example? I mean, let's face it, as a citizen, it's one thing for you to stand there with a sign. As a citizen wearing a retired police captain's uniform, you're going to get a different reaction from those people than I would. What has that reaction been like for you?
Well, I had a friend accompany me on Monday during one stretch of my walk down Broadway, and we passed about 20 helmeted riot police officers, and my friend told me afterwards that he wished he had a video camera, because he said it looked like every one of those officers had just taken a bite out of a lemon. I had a remark that I was a traitor, that I went over to the other side, and that's such a shame that the police see it as us against them. Instead of we're all in this together and we're all peacefully protesting for your rights also, the police see us as the enemy. When I say us, I mean the occupiers, which I am one of. And so basically, yes, I am met with resentment.
Well, it's interesting that people follow orders and they also receive a paycheck. Now, I know that there's been a lot of Wall Street money that has flowed towards the New York City Police Department, perhaps just because it's a loving gesture to hardworking people. But are you familiar with any monies that have gone in the direction from the banks to, say, the professional associations of the police?
Every election for any of the police associations, specifically the unions, the PBA, the Philadelphia Fraternal Order of Police, the unions that represent the officers, their campaigns for the presidency of these unions are heavily financed by the financial sector of the cities.
Well, that's almost criminal, it would seem to me. Wall Street, Occupy Wall Street has a saying, follow the money. And every time you follow the money, it goes up a dark alley that you really don't want to be going up. But let's change the subject to the idea that you have that education is a key thing. And you're putting yourself on the line for that, because I understand that you're attempting to put together a program, and put yourself out on the road so that you can visit different towns with a message for the police there and for the population and for the occupiers that there is a different way that police and civilians can interact with each other. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. I'm not actually putting it together, but I'm more joining an Occupy caravan started by Janet Wilson of Occupy the Roads and also Occupy Armed Forces, which have a large recreational vehicle bus. And I'm in the process of trying to locate a reasonable recreational vehicle so that I can join them in this caravan across the country.
Well, it seems to me that that's going to take a few dollars, so perhaps some of those people who pay $50,000 a plate to listen to our national candidates might find a few crumbs to send in your direction. Would that be appreciated?
That would be, a few crumbs would be more than appreciated, because that $50,000 a plate for a fundraiser could buy a lot of gasoline.
Yes, it could. Well, tell me, just what difference do you intend to make? What is it that you would have as a message that you would bring to us, to a small town, to an Occupy encampment, and to a police precinct that you think is part of this educational idea that you have?
Well, I'd like to let them know that the financial districts, the banks in this country are basically defrauding them of their savings, their health care, pensions, and for them to wake up to what's really going on, that it's not the poor people that are responsible for their situation. The present status quo has been very successful in making mainstream America think that it's the poor people that are draining this country and reducing their lifestyles. It's not. It's the 1%. And that's the message I hope to bring to mainstream America.
Well, that's the education that I was going to swing around to, and that is the educational aspects of what I saw with the Occupy birthday this past week. There's an organization called Strike Debt. It's strikedebt.org, which is a group that is affiliated with Occupy Wall Street. And they have, by way of a number of authors, have put together what is called the Debt Resisters Operations Manual. And this Debt Resisters Operations Manual will help people, just like you're helping people, understand things better so that they can respond better. This one is designed for the debtor. So as a policeman, does that ring of any importance to you as someone who's living on a fixed income and you have a pension that you live on, and yet you're going out and spending your time and your money? You might want to pick up one of these manuals.
Oh, absolutely. It sounds very interesting and very helpful. You pointed out a good thing, Jerry. My pension is fixed, and I have to be very careful about how I spend my money. But this movement has so moved me that I have put my financial interest a little to the side and committed to being involved in this movement for the past year. And even though a lot of my lodging has been free, there still are many incidental expenses that add up. And this trip would be one of the biggest if I am able to join it.
Well, then let's provide people with an email address and also with your Facebook contact information right now, so that if anybody would like to help you out, that's how they can find you.
I appreciate that wholeheartedly, Jerry. My email address is 218raylewis@gmail.com, and I have two Facebook pages. I have a profile page called Ray Occupy Lewis, and then my fan page is Captain Ray Lewis, and you can contact me through any of these three ways.
Well, I want to thank you very much for the time that you shared with us today, Ray. Is there any hope on your part that either of the parties, both Occupy as well as the police, can ever come up with an A grade?
Oh, absolutely, Jerry. It's a slow process, and that's one of the things as you get older you realize that you need patience for things. The younger generation, they're more impatient, just as we were when we were younger. When you get older, you realize these things take time, and so I'm well aware of that, and I'm willing to put forth the time that it's going to take to have change come about.
Well, I'd like to thank you for taking time to be with us. I'd like to thank the listeners for taking the time to hear what you have to say. And this is Jerry Ashton signing off until the next time on WGRNradio.com's 15 Minutes of Fact.